I want to explain. A few people asked why I didn't have my uniform on. If you're visiting today, I'm also military. This is what's called the informal. It's got the Air Force name and my name. It's an informal Air Force chaplain uniform. You all see you see me in uniform way too much sometimes. So that's why I thought I would wear this one today. Air Force, Army. Army, right.
Army.
You got it. Can you just, Bill, Uncle Bill,
Yeah.
can you just tell everybody who you are? Just,
Okay. Most people know I got my family here, and that's a proud of that. But I am legally William J. Koetje. At home, my home is in assisted living at Park Village Pines. And what else you want to know about me?
you probably don't want to answer this, but what is your age, Uncle Bill?
Okay, I'm 93 years old.
93.
Yeah.
And you just, about 5 months ago, you got to go on the Talon's honor flight.
Oh, yes, that was wonderful.
You got to go to D.C. and go to the World War II Memorial.
Oh, yeah, that was fantastic. I'm glad of that. The people of the United States thought enough of taking a few of us old vets over on that trip and see the memorial there.
Yeah, pretty moving, isn't it?
Yes, it's really.
Yeah, it is. Well, he ended up becoming my uncle when Sue and I got married. And that day when we got married here, I still remember you were moving better 8 years ago, and we got done, and Uncle Bill says to me, "You better take care of Susie, or I will get you." And I'm thinking, wait a minute, you're 85 at that time. What are you going to do? But you wanted to make sure that I took care of your niece, so that's
That's
really,
right. Yeah.
We're just going to share some. Uncle Bill did this with me at the base back in February for our prayer breakfast at the base, the Air Guard base.
Yes.
And so there was one of the battles that you were in, Uncle
Okay.
Bill, the Battle of Vichy, France.
That's right.
Can you share with us some of the experiences that were going on with that?
Okay, I'll try to do it step by step of what I can remember of the last large battle I participated in at Vichy, France. It was the Battle of Vichy, France. We met up there. We'd been going along, and out on the edge of Vichy, France was a Siegfried line. And this Siegfried line was camouflaged in the mountain, built inside the mountains. So it's camouflaged so we couldn't detect it when we ran into it. And it was built by the French first to protect France if the Germans attacked them. But the Germans come and took it over and turned the situation around inside and pointed it towards us Americans as they advanced. The thing we come up against, they pinned us down for 72 hours straight, was they had in the mountains, inside of them, we'll call them pillboxes, but they're concrete enclosures, was these hydraulic cylinders that raised out of the ground approximately a foot, and they had slits in them and they could spray the whole valley. They was on one side, we was coming down on the other side of this hill, and they had us pinned us down there for 3 days straight. Our artillery couldn't touch them, our Air Force couldn't touch them, and we couldn't touch them. I mean, that was just impossible. So on the second half of the second day, our artillery brought up self-propelled big guns, 105s, artilleries. And what they did, they spotted on this side of this mountain or hill one spot. They brought up 6 units. And they start firing around 3 o'clock in the afternoon on one spot, hit one spot, 6 of them, one right after another, all night long. And early in the morning, through the morning, till 10 o'clock. And at 10 o'clock, they finally busted a hole through this concrete was about 2 foot thick or better, I think. And so on, we'd give him the word when the attack. So, and I was lead man that morning, a point man, or whatever you want to call him. And I had to take off first, so I set up my men. I had with me my machine guns. I had over 2 machine guns. And put them in, so that they was in proper order and had enough ammunition and everything. Then I went back into the dugout, which we had there, that the Germans had left, and we used it. And that night before, they brought me up a replacement, because all our men were casualties practically. And I zeroed him in a little bit, and he was in the back of the hole, and with me. And finally I got him up, and I got up and I said, well, it's time for us to go. And he says to me, Sarge, are you a Christian? I said, yes. I said, what makes you answer? Ask me. He says, I heard you praying, Sarge. He was praying out loud. So then they said, let's come up to this opening there, and I said, okay, it's time for you to go. He says, pray for me, Sarge. I said, yes. And that man stepped out of that, and didn't step out of it, we had to crawl out of it. I crawled out of that emplacement there, and took about 3 steps, and an incoming shell come in, took him out, wiped him out. So I had to go on from there. As I crawled out my hole there and past him, he said, he wasn't quite dead yet, and he says, water, water, water. I couldn't give him any water because 17 degrees up when we was up there. It was in December. And my canteen was froze, his canteen was froze, so I had just passed him by and go on down. And then from there on, there was open fire. We crossed Dead Man's Land, that's what we called it, because they had power over us. They could shoot any way but they didn't. So, and it was my deal to work my place around and go and get up to that, and I didn't know what I was going to do with just an M1 rifle, 2 hand grenades, my shovel, and myself. But as I did it, start traveling across that valley there. I know from brush to brush, trying to keep as camouflaged as I could so they wouldn't see me. 2 men come from another outfit, it was a 100th Division outfit too, running past me at full speed, just as hard as they could run. And they come up to the edge of that mountain and dropped in a valley, a little ditch that they dug around it. And they didn't get up and use their pole charges, which they was carrying. Now, if you know what a pole charge is, I'll explain it just a little bit. It's dynamite, TNT, and nitro starch, wrapped up and around that end of that pole with a detonator in it. And it weighs about 20 to 25 pounds. And each one of these men had one of them. And they dropped in the hole, didn't know what to do because the hole was just out of their reach.
And the pole charger is about 20 feet long?
No, it's about 10 to 12 foot long.
12 foot long, okay.
Yeah.
So about like the flag poles.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. So I come tearing in there, and I dove in that ditch, and I said to this one man, I says, get up quick and stand up here, and I says, you're going to be my human ladder. I says, the other man, you took the other end of this pole charge, the live end of it. And as I stand on there, and I'm going to try to get that hole, and you're going to push it and guide me. And he did. We did that. And finally, after struggling through it, the pole charge started pulling up on me. I knew I was in the inside of the replacement, in emplacement there. So I ripped the cord, dropped in the ditch, and then boom. And there was a big explosion. We felt it. You could feel it in the earth running around us. I jumped up quick, and I said to the man again, let's do this again. We got to do it 2 times. So we did it right over again, and then this quieted that place down entirely. We blew it up, and we didn't blow it up because there wasn't enough strength to blow the mountainsides all. So then I jumped up and I looked around, and I thought, well, I had 2 hand grenades, and I took one and I threw it in the hole, just for safety's sake, so some German didn't stick his head out or throw a hand grenade out of there at us. So then all the troops come storming down the hill and over across the field, shouting and whooping it up really, and come up and took over. And I went down and went a little ways down. My men come up, two machine guns come up. So I said, what? Told one to get down towards one way and the other down the other way, because those Germans had ways of coming out of the dirt. And I didn't want them to attack us. At that time, I went down there to number 1 gun, and the medic come up to me and he says, Koetje, what's the matter? And I said, I don't think no matter at all. He says, well, you're limping terribly. I said, I was? And he says, yes. He says, let me see that left foot. So he took my boot off, and he couldn't get it back on again because I was froze. I had frozen feet, frozen hands, and frozen cheek. And that was, and I'll tell you how I went back to the medics. I mean, the engineers come up with explosives with a Jeep. There was 2 men in it when I was tagged, and that one man picked me up, threw me over the hood of the Jeep, grabbed a hold of my belt, and they took off. And I had a nice rough ride up across that valley and over the hill. And that was the end of my, not entirely the end of my combat. That was the end of my combat duties there for the next 3 months, because I spent that in the hospital.
Yeah. So with the gentleman, with the young man that had to step out and was killed, you had even though it was only for that short time, yeah. Uncle Bill, you had an impact on him.
I did.
That he knew you were a Christian and he asked for prayer.
He
so
asked me to pray for him.
Faith for you,
yeah.
You were living faith out in your relationship
yeah.
with Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay, so with that, so you're on the Jeep and they're taking you to the hospital.
Yeah.
What happened at the hospitals?
Well, I was brought to one of the forward aid stations, and I think some of you people know what that is. You've seen it on television and stuff.
Yep.
And I wasn't bleeding or anything, and I didn't have broken bones, just was froze up. So I was tagged as a not to emergency. So I lay there all the rest of the day, the biggest part of the day while they took care of it. And then they moved me back, and I went back to the little town of Sgt.Bill, France, and was put into a hospital there, a forward hospital. They just took over the French garrison. And then the French used a lot of horses and mules. And so we was put in the stables there. They cleaned out the stables, 2 stables side by side, 40 men in each stable. And something like that. Anyway, no, there's 80 men in each stable. They packed us in there that hard. And all wounded and so forth. We got there, and so it was Christmas, day before Christmas. They brought up a metal bed for me and a cot with mattress on it. And Christmas Eve, the girls and the ward boys come in and sang Christmas carols to us. And then the fellow laying next door to me, he says, hey, Koetje, he says, here comes Bed Check Charlie. Well, that was a German plane that usually come over as a reconnaissance plane they had to try to find our positions and so forth. So I laid there and I listened, because we could tell the sound of a German plane over against American planes. And I listened, I said to him, I said, that's no reconnaissance plane. I said, that's 2 motor planes, something's wrong. And I heard him feel up, he started taking off to get more altitude. And it tipped over and come diving down, released 2 bombs. That's the last I knew. But that was buried under it destroyed both of them buildings completely. All of the men in there, the two stables, except 4 of us, got out alive.
Why, how, you already said that you had received just a day or so before a metal bid,
Right.
a different bid. How,
Right. Well,
why do you think you came through that and the other 3, so 4 of you?
Okay.
What did you do when you heard the airplane?
when I heard them, and I heard them click, I tipped my cot over, my bed over, and I grabbed that mattress, was about 3 or 4 inches thick, and I pulled it over the top of me. And I was down on the floor, and I pulled it up just as close to the wall as I could, and covered myself, and then the bomb went off. I mean, and if I have to explain something there, the only reason I can figure out why I was not killed or some of the rest, because they was laying in beds, and the bombs, when they explode, they go up. And I got plenty of backlash from them, but I didn't get the full blast of them. The rest of them got the full blast, and they was laying higher than I was. Okay. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So if you all heard that, he laid down in the corner and put a mattress over himself. And
Yeah.
only 4 out of all of the men that were there survived.
No.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. With being one of the 4 throughout the next years, did you struggle with that thought at all, Uncle Bill? I mean, did you ever ask, why did I survive and somebody else didn't?
I've asked the Lord a lot of times.
Do you think about it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Still
I mean,
today.
that's when my Savior come in. He saved me, not me. I mean,
Yeah.
he was the one that seen that I got through the battles
Yeah.
all the way. So,
We have one individual here, Tom Goudsworth, who had passed away back in December. He was in Vietnam,
okay.
and he was almost like yours. He was only one of a handful that came out of a bunker,
Yeah.
that came out alive. Yeah. And some of you all may know some different stories like that of individuals. But the Lord brought you through.
That's what it is.
He brought you through the hospital, through the bombing. What happened after that?
Well, I don't know much because I didn't know much for a little while.
Okay.
I was out. That bombing knocked me completely out. I was out, and when I woke up in Paris, France, in a big general hospital there. And the Battle of the Bulge had started. It was going on full blast. The casualties were coming so fast in that they put us all out, and every room was full in the hallways. I had to lay out in the hallway. And finally, after I come to out there, I was come to when 3 officers were over me and talking. They was doctors. One of them said, well, we should send him to the States. And the other one said, no, he'll never make it. His body's too banged up for that. So they agreed on that, and they sent me to England. That's where I spent 4 different hospitals over there. Because the war was going on, the Battle of the Bulge, and everything kept filling up. The wounded kept coming back. So.
Within the whole experience, Uncle Bill, how was your relationship with Jesus or God? How, during that time? Go ahead.
Okay. What relationships I had? Well, after I was bombed out, I was pretty much a zombie. I just didn't know where I was at. I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, they'd come and every time I start stirring and getting to and start shouting or something like that, because I was in pain, they'd give me a shot and then put me down again. So, but after that, I came to enough to take and realize that Jesus was with me and had saved me through all that ordeal.
Yeah. You and I have talked, Uncle Bill, about the fact that you've said it was really weird how one day you were fighting against the Germans,
Yeah.
And the next day, the war was done.
Yeah.
And that you even shared with me that still sometimes today, sometimes some of those old feelings come back.
Yeah, they do. You bet they do, because I don't know how to explain that. I mean, I have no explanation for that. But those things cross your mind a lot of times. I mean, and I have to fight against it a lot of times too.
Mm-hmm.
But you asked me that, and I know. I mean, so you asked me how the transition was.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I got a little story that was after the war there, and we ended up down in the foothills of the Alps. Was cut off a path and come through the Alps. And in that little town, a little farm town, it was cut off from both ways, us and through their pass. So they don't have no food brought in or anything. And we had to eat outside. Wow, coming in loud now. And well, we was field soldiers. We didn't have no beds or bunks or nothing like that. I ate and slept outdoors all the time. And in this little village, that was right after the war, those Germans were very skeptical of us. They watched every move we made. Mm-hmm. Only they didn't show themselves. They stayed behind curtains in the houses and stuff to look and watch us. Then about the third or fourth day after the war, I was sitting I got my breakfast and sitting on the curb there. You're going to eat it. And here comes two little girls. Two little German girls come walking. They just stood in front of me. They were pale. Their eyes were glassy. They had their pale, funny look on their face and so forth. They were hungry. They weren't hungry. They were starving. And my first impression, I'll tell you that too. I looked up, Kraut kids. I mean, that's German kid. As Kraut kids, what have I got to do with you? This went through my mind. You were enemies. Go away, go away. That was what I thought. So I was standing there and I had my fork in my hand come up, and it seemed that I couldn't bring that food to my mouth anymore. And then I thought again, now what's happened to me? I went through the war, I was alive yet, and now this, what's this? Then I looked up again, and I looked into four glassy eyes, and then pale, drawn faces. And I got a lump in my throat as big as a grapefruit. And 2 tears went rolling down my cheek. And Jesus touched me. I know that. And I gave the little girl my fork. I reached in my other pocket, took my spoon out, and held my biscuit, and let them eat my food. I can go on from there, but we'll just stop there, shall we? You got other questions?
Now, Uncle Bill, when he did this in February, did amazing at the base. He just last week spoke at a Memorial Day service, so he didn't know if he would be able to do this morning, and he was afraid he wouldn't be able to talk. Isn't it pretty amazing? I mean, he knows these. He's lived these stories. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Well.
You want me to give my last testimony?
Well, two things. I wanted to make sure it was okay, this next question. At the base, he said, don't ask it, but he got into it right away without me asking it. So, Uncle Bill, within the war, you had to do some things that people struggle with,
yeah,
and had to take other people's lives.
Yeah.
Within that, how have you at times felt God's grace, or sometimes still struggling with God's grace?
Oh, I struggle with it a lot.
Okay.
Because those things I'm in, when you get discouraged or something like that, something don't go right, that's the things that come in your mind. And I'll tell you right out now, it's not nice to shoot people and kill them. And you know you did it. So, it's God's grace that carried me through.
Yeah.
So,
And you did what you had to do,
I
but
had to
you're
do-
60 years later, 70 years later, you're still walking with some of that pain.
Yes, that's the right. There was a program on the television last night. And some of them old veterans were saying the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It says that one gentleman said it seems just like yesterday that these things happened. That he explained some of the bad things,
Yeah.
gruesome things.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, war is evil. War is wicked. Because we were hired to kill or be killed.
Yeah.
So
And you did what you had to do.
I did what I had to do. I went where you wouldn't go. And where other people, I did what